Okay, hello and welcome to IPAF's webinar covering the 2024 Global Safety Report. My name is Brian Parker and I'm the Head of Safety and Technical for IPAF. So today it's my pleasure to be both your host and co-presenter today. We've got people joining us today from all around the world, so that really is great. So I guess it's certainly good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you are joining us from today. But most importantly, thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to meet us today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and will be on the IPAF website and the IPAF YouTube channel in the next coming days. And of course, just a quick reminder, this is where you can find past and future webinars and events. Now we will, subject to time, have a question and answer session where if you do have any questions, I will put and submit these to our panel of expert speakers so we can discuss these and see if we can get some answers to you. Sometimes we can't make all them questions during the time we've got allocated. So what we will do is we'll endeavour to look at them and answer them afterwards. Now today, I'm very pleased to have joining me Alana Patterson. Alana is Head of Health, Safety, Environmental at Taylor Woodrow, which is a large major Tier 1 contractor in the UK. But Alana is also Chair of the International Safety Committee for IPAF. And joining Alana today, we also have Rob Cavallari. Rob is Compliance Manager for Manlift Middle East. And Rob is also the Vice Chair of the IPAF International Safety Committee. So we've got the two head honchos here for you today to really answer any questions that you see fit. So hopefully you will welcome them accordingly when they come onto their screen. So just a real quick one, kind of reminder of who IPAF are. We are a not-for-profit members trade organisation representing the interests of manufacturers, distributors, users, rental and training companies. Well over 1,600 members now around the world. Now, I guess probably from an IPAF perspective, and I've been involved with IPAF for some nearly 3 decades now, coming up for. We're best known for the IPAF PAL training scheme, but I think those of you who know us, there is a lot more that we do, and there's a lot more that we get involved with. But IPAF's mission is simple, as it states on the screen there: promote and enable the safe and effective use of powered access worldwide. Now, we do this by a number of ways, but let's keep it today's topic of the webinar, and that is that we monitor accident data from the industry. Essentially, that's coming from yourselves, from our members, from our organisations, and that then helps us to produce global safety reports, safety campaigns. Sometimes them safety campaigns are global, but also sometimes they can be local as well if there's significant trends that indicate to us that we need to look at that in a certain area. But of course, we do prepare for you the global safety report. Now, the 2024 global safety report, if you've had a chance to go on it, you'll notice it's a digital version only. And it basically moves away from the previous downloadable and PDF versions and kind of InDesign versions that we had on the web and that we'd produced in the past. This new format is digital only, but it enables users to navigate and filter using an interactive screen. The latest data, and you must be, I'm being very clear on this, focuses on fatal and major incidents only. Now that also gives the ability to segment with short, medium and long-term data. So really clear that this is fatal and major incidents only. Now, the data can illustrate emerging patterns and trends, and it does enable you to compare 2023's data against the medium and long-term data that we've got in the accident portal. And hopefully this highlights any safety, any training, and maybe for you going forward, what are the main risks to you as organizations? And, because I often get asked, what's the biggest issue with powered access? What should I be looking for? Where should I be focusing our risk assessments and our method statements, etc. on? Just to be real clear as well, that the accident data that we show in the report is always a year in arrear. So the 2024 accident data that we are receiving now will not appear in this report until next year. And the idea is there that, what we'll do is, we compile it, we review it, we make sure it's anonymized, and then the data, the raw data, the anonymized data goes to the International Safety Committee. That International Safety Committee approves the data, and then we will build into, or update the report accordingly. So hopefully that makes sense to you. We are certainly hoping that this new style of report will be a success and certainly become the blueprint for future global safety reports. So what's changed? What's new? So in essence, the main change this year is the shift from a static report, which you could open as a book type thing, to a digital and with some sort of segmented information. If you've had the chance to review previous reports, you will know there is significantly less wording and less things to review and less things to kind of look at and think, well, so what should I be doing? And in truth, this was really important that we moved away from that. I think the important thing is to make the charts and the data speak for themselves. After all, this is your data, and IPAF and the industry will always thank you for this, and it helps us, ultimately to look at new guidance, look at the IPAF training courses, the various ones that we have, and then of course review accordingly. So I think it's really important that you understand that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to end this presentation slightly. I'm going to move to the actual global safety report, and hopefully you can get an idea of what I'm meaning. So when you go onto the IPAF website and you click on the IPAF Global Safety Report, you basically you come to this screen here. Just to give you a bit of an insight, up on the top right here, you can see you can change your language depending on which language that you wish to view it in. I'm not 100% certain, but if you are in another country and you log in by your access login data, it will probably automatically update into your own language. On the button here, okay, you've now got a menu, and this menu will give you the ability to jump to any of the sections that you wish to go to. So for example, if you just want to look at something around overturns, or you want to look at mast climbers and construction hoists, entrapment, you can jump to that section. Failing that, you can navigate the whole report as you go through. At the very bottom there, you can also see there is a link to the IPAF accident reporting portal. Remiss of me not to say that we welcome you to register yourself there, and you will be able to not only just get this report, but you'll get further insights. And of course, we've got the IPAF website and resources, which I will focus shortly. So I can just get rid of that now. So I'm just going to roll down to some of the data. Now, even here now, you can see, we've got a bit of an introduction. And it tells you a little bit about why we've done this, what the actual report's focusing on, and it clearly there about focusing on fatal and major incidents only. It gives you a little bit about IPAF and when we started collating and collecting this data, and then you've got an introductory statement from Alana, who you'll hear a little bit later on, in relation to what her thoughts were on the portal. We then move on to the exec summary. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole report, you'd be glad to hear, all right? But, and I'll probably pick one or two sections and something else, and then we'll move on to our co-speakers, because I know you'll be probably looking forward to hearing for some of them. But, the exec summary is really the highlight, as you would expect an exec summary, the high-level data that and high-level information that we want you to take away from this report. Quite simple, quite straightforward. And then when we look at the key findings, now I've had this presentation open, I've had the report open, but when you click on the report, these will count up. So at the moment, because I've already had it open, it's not doing the counter for me at the moment. But you can see there now it's alluding to the top 3 lost time incidents for 2023. It's giving you the countries, the regions, the amount of people, and that number on the right, you can see there that speaks for itself. To give you some ideas to what we're talking in terms of the colours and what they are, you can see here that these are all going to give you indicators as to the types of equipment, the relevant countries that have reported, and the types of sectors that have been involved. And there's obviously some information at the bottom there that kind of backs that up. So if you were looking at something in relation to, hiring a, I don't know, a 3B or a 1B type machine, this will give you an indicator then of, how high in terms of categorization they are in terms of, likelihood of having incidents. We then move down to the line chart, which gives you the trends. And these are, for example, if you're wishing to put a report together for one of your, your board reports or something, you can isolate these to use that to give an indicator of the trends that are occurring in the industry and give you some idea of what are the issues. And you can see, there's some downs, some peaks and troughs there. Some were heading in the right way, but I think we can probably certainly look there that most of them are heading upwards. The more data we collect, the more that's going to go up, and I'll never make any sort of apologies for that. But that's something that everybody always questions and always asks, surprise. But you can see from back in the day when we started collating the data, and this is over that period, we've had a sharp increase in some areas. So as it's first on the list, I'm going to pick electrocutions and electric shocks. Remember, of course, I could have jumped straight down to there, or I could jump back as I wish, like you would do when you're navigating a website. So some headline data, some examples of and definitions of what we would deem as being electrocutions or electric shocks, and then some information then about planning and analysis. So the one thing I will also point out is that the relevant countries, you may see there's a, earlier on the charts on the pie chart, you just in the US had submitted the most reports for, in this occasion, 87% of incidents. This data isn't normalized. So in other words, that the US market is vast. It's one of the largest one of the largest, I would probably say, industries there over in the US. But in terms of, we're talking 1.3 to 1.6 million machines over there. Whereas if we take something like another country, it might be in the hundreds or the 1,000s, 2,000s. So as industry stats. So just to make sure that you're clear on that. Okay, again, because I've had the report up, this doesn't count up, but this would count up to give you an indicator of what it is. And we've also got there whether or not we've got an increase or a decrease. And you can see on the previous 2022 data, the increases are accordingly there. So then we now move into the machine categories, and a slightly different chart here to give you an indicator of the types of equipment over that period. So you can see there that in terms of 2023, the booms, scissors, verticals, and the 3A and the 1A static verticals. Okay. And then when we come to countries, you can see here, again, another little bit there information on where the countries. So as I said, US, this is normalized data. So, and then when we get to electrocutions and sectors, this is where we can now start to look at different data over different periods of time. So if I want to look at the 2023 data always appears, so the latest data that we've got always appears on the left. And then we can switch between various data sources to get an indicator as to see, what's going right, what's going wrong. So you can see construction down here, 4 fatalities, 8 major injuries, but in the medium long-term data, we had 19. And then we had the long-term data, 38. So it gives you a bit of an insight there. We also have it by location. So it gives you an indicator as to where the incidents occur in roads and highways, construction sites. Is it in a public area or was it on a commercial premises? And then we also have resources available. Now, when you're on the Global Safety Report, if I click on any of these reports, these resources, it will immediately take me away from the website and take me to the resource. And when I look at the resource, it will take me to something like this, and it will factor in on what type of resource you look at. Incidentally, when you are on here, you can look for technical guidance. You can put in here, what you want to put in here. You might say, I want to look at harness, okay, and it's going to bring up all your data that you need. So it's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Okay, and then we move on to faults on the platform. So I'm not going to dwell too much on them at the moment, but as you can see, and we hope that we're covering everything. The one thing that we've also got here is mass climbing work platforms and construction sites. So for those of you who are involved in this sector, we have limited data in this area. We're always looking for more, and we would welcome any more data that does actually come through in here. So again, some really good insights into things, into what's occurred in the mass climbing world and the construction hoists. So hopefully that kind of makes sense in that point. I think that concludes what I wanted to show on there. The navigation button is really key to where you want to look at. And look, this is the first iteration of us, completing this global safety report. I think we need to wait a little bit of time, see people's views and feedback and such, and then hopefully, for future reports, we can make some more and some newer changes and give you some more insights. But okay, so hopefully that covers that part. What I'd like to do now is pass over to Rob Cavalieri. So Rob, the floor is yours. I will just stop sharing.
Thank you, Brian, and hello, everyone. So I'm presenting today on entrapment, and I'll wait for my slides to come up. Yeah, so on my presentation today, I would like to begin with the MEWP industry definition of entrapment. So it is a situation in which the MEWP operator or occupant of a MEWP becomes trapped or crushed between the MEWP controls or platform guardrails and an immovable object or external structure. Next slide, please. So in this data slide here, you can see along with falls from the platform, electrocution and electric shock and overturns, the frequency of entrapment incident is situated in the top 4 fatality numbers related to MEWP incidents. Next slide, please. On this slide here, you can see entrapment by industry sector and location, and this is 3-year data. It's worth noting that entrapment related incidents are generally associated with higher likelihood of fatality, and also that construction activity by industry and location continues to be the MEWP use application where entrapment is presenting most frequently. Next slide, please. Okay, on this slide here, I'm moving into causation. What can cause an entrapment incident? What are the contributing factors for entrapment? I'm not going to read all these bullet points. I'm going to read these top 10 in the yellow box here. So these are the 10 or 11 action required focus areas that contribute to entrapment. 1, not watching in the direction of travel or movement during operation, and this can be in the elevated or transport position. 2, incorrect control function selection. 3, confined, congested area use, and lack of operator skill. 4, erratic or overspeeding control use in the driving or boom function use there. 5, poorly maintained equipment or using faulty equipment. 6, uneven ground surface conditions and not considering this in the planning phase. 7, over-reliance on secondary guarding, and this comes under the complacency heading. And 8, lack of competence for managers and supervisors in the planning phase. There's a great course called MEWPs for Managers, which addresses this issue, one of the IPAF courses available. 9, leaning out of the platform during manoeuvring. And 10, incorrectly adjusted drive or lift function ramping gain or threshold. So that's a technical thing, but sometimes when we're using MEWP controls, they can operate abruptly or unexpectedly, and this can be a technical thing. And I have 11 there as well, which is not showing on the slide, and that's use of the MEWP from the ground controls for normal use. We should know that the MEWP ground controls are intended for emergency use only and for pre-use inspections. And if we're using them for normal use, we can significantly increase the likelihood of entrapment, not only for those in the platform or basket, but also for the person who's operating the controls from the ground station. Next slide, please. So we're still in causation here. And this slide here, these photos show applications where entrapment could present in many industry sectors. You can see here we're looking at congested areas and maybe the steel structures and beams, inside workshops. Maybe the lighting has been compromised as well, moving in and out of doorways or in and around congested areas you can see there. Next slide, please. So still on causation here, what are the contributing factors? I've got a couple of photos here. You can see photo G. So photo G is representing a failed safety switch. This is a primary guarding switch on a MEWP on the boom controls here. And this is an example of a technical mechanical failure. And it's also related to maintenance practice, and it can be a negative influence on entrapment. This primary guarding switch requires two intentional commands from the operator. And if the safety switch component is not working, that means the switch can actuate a function unintentionally, and that can potentially lead to an entrapment situation. And then we have photos H and I. So photos H is obviously clearly an unclear control panel, which is covered in paint and debris, and yes, if you can't determine which control is going to operate when you're operating a switch, maybe you want to use the jib function to maneuver, and you move the riser or the upper boom or lower boom instead, and this can cause an entrapment situation. And the same with photo I. Photo I is an example where we put maybe a plastic cover over the controls, and they can become opaque due to sun in a short space of time, or they can hold fog and mist under them due to condensation, or they can cause glare because of the sun. So the point here is, if we're going to put these type of things on the controls, they need to be replaced at the same frequency we would replace the safety decal underneath if it was to become covered in paint or debris, for example. Next slide. Now moving into prevention. So prevention against entrapment incidents, and with a focus initially on the next 3 slides on secondary guarding and secondary guarding devices. What is secondary guarding? So the definition of secondary guarding is a device fitted to a MEWP in addition to the primary guarding systems to further reduce the risk of entrapment and or provide an alert that an entrapment situation has occurred. So with picture A here, you can see an example of secondary guarding that might be fitted to a 3A or a vertical lift, and they're often called whiskers. They are switches fitted to poles, contact poles. So if these poles come into contact with an object or structure, the MEWP functions will cease and an audible visual alarm will go off. And picture B is an operator presence system. So this might use, for example, a technology called LiDAR. So the LiDAR understands where the operator is in relation to the controls. And if the operator is not in the expected position, again, the MEWP functions will cease and an audible visual alarm will sound. And then we have pictures C, D, and E. There are examples of protective structures or physical barriers. Picture C is providing some enhanced protection for the operator of the boom lift. Picture D is providing protection around the cage. And picture E is providing more lateral protection or sideways protection for the operator and occupants of the platform. But I wanted to read this paragraph to you. Secondary guarding fitted to MEWPs. Even if secondary guarding was mandated as a primary guarding protective measure, it is a misconception that secondary guarding will provide all occupants in the platform absolute protection against entrapment in all applications and situations. It will not. So what do we need to do? We need to have proper training for operators and managers, proper planning, risk assessment by a competent person, constant observation of surroundings by the platform occupants, and then following well-documented good practice guidance to avoid trapping and crushing injuries. And I'm going to give you an example of that on the last slide. The above, combined with secondary guarding installations, is the key to reducing the entrapment incident occurrence. Next slide, please. So still on prevention here. So these 4 pictures you can see here, A, B, C, and D, these show control measures via secondary guarding, and these represent currently the most common secondary guarding devices fitted to boom-type MEWPs. These can be classified as either reactive contact devices or breakaway bars and contact alarms, depending on the manufacturer. And how they work is, if an operator makes a mistake, they push up against these bars or these contact devices, functions will cease, and it provides some wiggle room for the operator to fall to the platform if they've been injured, and then for the emergency rescue plan to take place. Sometimes controls will be reversed, drive or some boom functions can be reversed also, and audible visual warning devices will sound, alerting those below that an entrapment situation has occurred. Then I'd like to jump to figure 2. If you look at figure 2, you can see that operator A is really the only person in the basket who's receiving some enhanced protection from this secondary guarding, whereas occupants B and C don't benefit from this secondary guarding as much. And then again, even only when the basket is moving in the direction of the blue arrow, and then the secondary guarding has a greater chance of operating effectively. And the same with figure 1. The secondary guarding will be more effective if the basket is moving in the direction of the blue arrows there for it to actuate correctly. Next slide, please. Now I'm moving into what we call secondary guarding via proximity sensors and, for example, ultrasonic sensors. So one improved control over entrapment can be via the use of proximity sensors that can utilize sound waves, ultrasonic and or radar wave technology, or LiDAR, laser light. So these systems offer more proactive rather than reactive measures and can offer greater protection coverage of the basket or platform area and its occupants. And they also offer increased functionality, for example, speed reduction when approaching objects. Okay, so in picture A and B, you can see examples of proximity sensors that can be installed on MEWPs as a component of secondary guarding. And pictures C, D, and E are graphical displays that show how this technology beams out, providing awareness and increased protection against entrapment incident. And picture F's an interesting one. It can be referred to as enhanced operator protection that can be included in the operator or occupant's personal PPE equipment. So ultrasonic sensors fitted into the head protection devices of the MEWP occupants. Okay, next slide, please. And here's a short video. Please watch this video. It's about awareness examples of the entrapment incident. Please play the video. Okay, so some good awareness examples of entrapment incident there and some of the recommended control measures. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and this is on the control measures to avoid entrapment. And I'd like to first focus on the document on the left-hand side. So this is IPAF's good practice guidance for reducing trapping and crushing injuries to people in mobile elevating work platforms. And it contains everything you need to know to understand and to reduce the incidence of entrapment. So I really recommend that document, helping us to be prepared for entrapment and reduce its likelihood and respond appropriately. Please remember that one of the biggest challenges related to entrapment incident has been the lack of awareness that an incident has occurred at height. This needs to be mitigated when preparing your emergency and rescue plan. Entrapment incidents are often serious in their effect to the human body, so early awareness and fast response are very important. So that's it for me today, my entrapment awareness presentation. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Rob, thank you. I've seen some controls covered in paint before, but I don't think I've ever experienced such an amount of paint. I think there's more paint on the machine than there actually probably was on the wall. But yeah, that's some photo that, yeah, mind boggles. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rob. Just a quick reminder to everybody, remember, you can ask your questions. We're not shy, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. So now I'm going to hand over to Alana Patterson. Alana, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Brian. Hi, everyone. I'm Alana Patterson. Brian introduced me earlier. I am chair of the IPAF International Safety Committee. which I've been doing for just over a year now. So I've got just over a year left. And today I want to talk to you about the top 6 common causes of accidents that are detailed within this year's Global Safety Report. I'm just waiting on my slides coming up. Thank you, Matteo. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, Matteo. So the common causes of accidents as detailed within the Global Safety Report are falls from the platform, overturns, entrapment, which I'm not going to labour too much on given the fact that Rob has just spoken to you about entrapment incidents, hit by a vehicle or a machine, electrocution, and mechanical and technical failures. So first touching on falls from the platform. The 2022 IPAF Don't Fall for It safety campaign, the main focus from that was to send a clear message that falls from height were still the main cause of fatalities in the powered access industry. The campaign was supported by a number of guidance documents, leaflets, toolbox talks, the usual anti-access posters, and it was given as much exposure as we possibly could through IPAF's website, social media, and the various events that IPAF attends and that we all support as members. It identifies the key causes of falls from the platform and provides advice about how to avoid those associated hazards. To reduce the risk from falling from the platform, you should always plan thoroughly. You know, what is it you need to do? How are you going to do that safely? What does your risk assessment say? What is in your safe system of work? Know the machine that you're going to use. Is it the right machine for the task? If needs be, clip on. If it's a boom type MEWP, in most countries today, it's mandatory for you to clip on with a harness. Set up and maneuver the machine and the platform effectively, and stay inside the platform with your lanyard attached if you need one. In 2023, the data told us that from fatal and major injuries, there were 38 reports. Those were from 7 countries, and there were 41 people involved in those incidents. Unfortunately, 29 of those people died. Because falling from height, it doesn't matter what height you fall from, the injuries, more often than not, are very significant. We have provisional data from 2024, so up until the 1st of August this year, compared to the same time last year, we've had 7 reports, which is down 73% of falls from the platform. They are from 4 countries, again, down 43%. There were 9 people involved, which is a 73% reduction. But unfortunately, 7 of those were fatalities, albeit a 70% reduction in the number of fatalities on the data from the year previous, year to date. Next slide, please. So on the screen, you can see the graph that shows you the trend data for falls from the platform from 2014 to 2023. You can see that we had a gradual rise from 2019 to 2022, and then it leveled off. We do encourage anyone involved in the safe operation of MEWPs to read the guidance that we released, because it will inevitably save lives when you look at the number of incidents and the outcome of those incidents. Next slide, please. So next I want to talk to you about overturns. Incidents involving overturns are on the rise. And I'll show you the data in a second. They're usually due to instability, and it is preventable with proper planning and safe operation of the MEWPs that are being used. MEWPs, as many of us know on this webinar, are only as safe as the person who is using it and operating them, the person that's planned the operation. Accidents will happen if safe operating procedures are not followed as per the manufacturer's operator's guidance. Planning for MEWP operations should, in most cases, originate from a risk assessment, which in turn develops into your safe system of work. So how are you going to carry out the work safely? And it's critical that your safe system of work and your risk assessment is followed, and we don't violate that, because this is when incidents occur. ground risk assessments are hugely important in terms of overturns. And when you're looking at the risks involved with ground stability, it may include the following hazards. So things like soft ground, sloping or uneven ground, the proximity of a machine to any excavations which could collapse, objects which could cover voids such as sheets of wood. I work in the construction industry for a tier 1 civil engineering contractor. We generally do tend to have lots of excavations and voids with the work that we do, but we need to make sure that they're covered appropriately and people know where they are. Or do you have any curbs? Are you going to have to bump over a speed hump if you're working in an industrial setting? Uncompacted and filled ground, and there are lots of other reasons. So looking at the data, in 2023, again looking at fatal and major injuries, there were 23 reports from 9 countries and 32 people were involved. Of those 32 people, 24 people died. So when we compare that with this year's data year to date, there were 13 reports, which is down 13%, and 5 countries have reported. 18 people have been involved, and fortunately, far less fatalities in the ratio of number of people involved. That has reduced by 36% to 7 fatalities. Next slide, please. So again, when we look at the trend, like I said, we have seen a rise in overturns. We've seen on an average rise since 2014, but from 2022, we have actually seen quite a significant spike. We do have plenty of guidance on the reasons why MEWP overturns occur, and the guidance does offer control measures to prevent these incidents. So please do have a look at the IPAF resources page for more information. Next slide, please. So Rob's already spoken to you about entrapment, and I did promise that I wouldn't labour on this. Obviously, we did have the campaign launch at for this year at the summit, which Brian and I launched, the Crush and Can Kill campaign, and it's supported by new and existing safety and technical resources. And IPAF will be promoting the campaign throughout the remainder of this year. We have released new legislation neutral guidance, as Rob said, into preventing trapping and crushing injuries. And this is available to anyone. You can freely download it from the IPAF website. And it is a valuable resource, and I would encourage any end users who are using machines to download this and take a look through it. In 2023, we had 16 reports from 9 countries. There were 15 people involved and 13 fatalities, which shows us that the incidents involving entrapment are nearly always fatal. The comparative data year to date for 2024 are 9 reports, which is down 18%. 5 countries have reported, which is down nearly 30%. There were 9 people involved this year, and 6 of those were fatal injuries, down 40% from last year. Next slide, please. And Rob has already showed you this data around entrapments. We did see a spike in the number of reports from 2020 to 2022, hence the reason for the campaign. Next slide, please. So next, I want to focus on hit by a vehicle or machine. And in the powered access industry, we do see this from time to time, particularly as shown in the image where you have the knuckle of the boom of a machine sticking out past any protection around the machine. Again, planning is key, and I know I've talked about planning considerably throughout this presentation, but it is the key to preventing most of the incidents that we experience. In your plan, obviously, again, you should consider your risk assessments, do a site assessment. What is the best way to set up? What is the best machine to use to minimise these types of incidents? What controls do you need in place? Develop your safe working procedure or your safe system of work. Make sure that you have competent operators select the correct equipment, as I've said. Make sure you brief your operators, maybe use some physical controls such as traffic management, and make sure that you have adequate supervision. In 2023, we saw 14 reports from 7 countries. There were 17 people involved and 9 fatalities, unfortunately. In 2024 year to date, we've had 3 reports, which is down 70%, which is quite a significant decrease. 2 countries have reported there have been 4 people involved, and 1 of those has been a fatality, unfortunately, and that is down 83%. And we will look at the trend data, incidents involving MEWPs being hit by vehicles. Sorry, Matteo, next slide. Incidents involving MEWPs being hit by vehicles or machines have fluctuated over the last 10 years. However, from 2019, we did see a rapid rise in incidents of this nature due to 2021. But from 2021 onwards, we have seen a decrease and then another rise. Next slide, please. So Brian spoke earlier about electrocutions, and our 2023 campaign was about preventing electrocutions involving MEWPs. Given the fact that it was one of the biggest causes of deaths within the powered access industry, and the guidance document is around electrocutions and electric shocks. The guidance document is intended to provide information for those of you who plan and manage MEWP operations. It covers the main causes of electrocutions, particularly looking at power lines. It raises awareness to the hazards and risks in the working in close proximity to power lines. And it talks about the industry sectors where electrocutions and electric shocks occur. It will help you to identify the control measures needed for any risk assessments and safe systems of work to reduce the number of incidents occurring. And it will provide general global guidance for those of you who undertake these tasks. As Brian has said, and as we've covered earlier in the presentation, IPAF have had a particular focus on de-legislating our guidance so it can be used in any country across the world. So for electrocutions in 2023, there were 34 reports from 7 countries that involved electrocutions and/or electric shocks that were fatal and major. 38 people were involved in those, and there were 25 fatalities. So this year, comparing the data to the same time last year, we've had 14 reports, which is down 40%. 5 countries have reported, which is actually a significant increase. 15 people involved, which is down 46%, and 8 fatalities, which is down 55%. And if we can move on to the next slide, again, it shows you the trend involving electrocutions, and we can see that it fluctuates over the years with some significant increases, but rose again in 2023. And IPAF has recommended that all users and operators of MEWPs download the IPAF guidance document, which is called the Safe Use of MEWPs in the Vicinity of Power Lines. So next slide, please. And the last topic that I want to focus on, which is mechanical and technical failures, which we need to have a focus on that to maximise safety and reliability of machine. It also prolongs the lifespan of a MEWP. So operators, let's focus on operators first. Operators must carry out pre-use checks on any machine before they use it on any given day. If it's the first time that they have operated that machine on that day, it is key to identifying any faults or issues prior to utilising the machine. And equipment rental companies must adhere to the requirements from the machine manufacturers on service, maintenance and inspection. And additionally, MEWPs must be inspected routinely and periodically by a competent person to ensure that they are safe to operate. And what that looks like in different countries does change. For example, here in the UK, we would call that a 6-monthly LOLA thorough examination. In terms of mechanical and technical failures, in 2023, with fatal and major injuries, we saw 11 reports from 8 countries. There were 18 people involved and 10 fatalities. When we compare that to the data that we have for this year so far, we've had 5 reports, which is down nearly 17%. 5 countries have reported with 6 people involved and 2 fatalities, which is down nearly 50%. And if we can look at the last graph in the presentation, you can see that with mechanical and technical failures, we saw quite a large spike in the number of incidents in 2019 to 2020. We really don't know what caused this, but there is a possibility that a lot of MEWPs were stood down during COVID and then returned to service. If we can move on to the next slide, please. The last thing I would like to talk to you about today is reporting incidents on the IPAF accident portal. Obviously, as the chair of the IPAF International Safety Committee, this data is hugely important to our committee. It is how we, it's the information that we use to decide on campaigns and focus areas for our committee. And we use that information to work with IPAF to decide what guidance we want to give you, what are the things that you need to know more information about. IPAF and its members share the data involving powered access equipment to allow us to identify the risks and the common trends, which, as I've said, inform the guidance, training and safety campaigns. And we aim to increase our understanding of working practices and reduce the incidents in every country across the world. The reporting is not restricted to IPAF members. It's not restricted to any person or organisation. Anyone can report an incident. And IPAF gather information on incidents involving not just MEWPs, but mass climbing work platforms and construction hoists, which at the moment we don't have a huge amount of information on, but it would be great to get more information on the incidents that do involve those pieces of equipment. In 2024, we have actually seen a decrease in the reporting of incidents compared to the same time in 2023. So we are focusing on encouraging the users of powered access to report incidents, no matter how small they are. This can be done online via the EPAL app for those of you who have operators licenses and have access to the EPAL app. And reporting can be anonymous. It doesn't have to, you don't have to say who you are. However, please rest assured, as someone who receives the information that goes into the incident reporting portal, IPAF do anonymise all of the data. I couldn't tell you who had one incident to the next incident, so please do share the information with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alana. Great, and really appreciate you giving us a walk through the main 6 reasons for fatal and major incidents. And again, thank you for the plug on the action reporting. It is very much appreciated.
No problem.
Okay, so let me just. So just to really sort of re-emphasize what we've heard here, and I suppose turning it back to this year's safety campaign, when we look at the data and we look at various sort of aspects of it, 9 times out of 10, well, very most of the time, if we have a crushing incident, an entrapment incident, it's normally fatal. And we've got, Rob alluded to quite a few number of solutions and guidance that we've got there. So, when we are looking for a machine, it's not just a question of picking that next machine or the same machine that we had last time. There may be a better machine and a better substitute or a newer type of machine with more, with secondary guarding that's available. I am a big believer, though, that the best defense you've got is your own eyes and your senses. Myself, having nearly been caught in an entrapment situation many years ago, it was my senses that kept me kind of a little bit more aware. But again, if we see some of the issues like Rob showed in terms of the quality of the equipment that we're using, then we're going to really sort of struggle to understand which way is up, down, left and right. So, for me, certainly that is something that needs to be highlighted, and supervisors need to be checking the equipment you know, when they're looking at these types of equipment. So our campaign is live. I do urge you to go across to there. And just to give you a little bit of an insight as to what sort of resources that are available, obviously we've got familiarization. Remember, there are many different types of machines out there, models, makes, heights. So familiarization is really, really key. Rob mentioned about the good practice guidance. So this has been stripped out of all UK legislation and just generally good, you know, raw guidance and data and information for you to go away and plan. We've also got the safe use of MEWPs in public areas, which kind of ties into sort of the MEWPs in, you know, next to street works, next to sort of roads and highways, where they can. And then we've got, you know, guidance on emergency rescue. Of course, one of the things that we do never forget about is the toolbox talks and the Andy Access posters that we've got. These resources are available. They're free for you. If you want them personalized, you just need to get in touch with IPAF. We can put your logos on them and you can display them in your, you know, your work cabins or your restrooms and such. Toolbox talk probably sometimes doesn't translate particularly well in some countries, but it's kind of what we know in the UK. So these are just really short safety briefings, reminders. And of course, we've got the guidance on rescue from persons and from MEWPs. Alana mentioned about accident reporting, and I want to show you now our latest Andy Access short, which I hope you'll find really useful in regarding to accident reporting. Okay, and you know, again, thank you very much for those who do supply your accident data to us, because it is certainly really useful. I notice on the chat function that we don't really have any questions. You've either been very, very shy today, or you've been very, very kind to us. I don't know which is the latter. I do see some familiar faces on here, so I'll take you maybe being kind to us. Is that just because we can rabble on a little bit too much? I don't know. But you know, I'm just going to probably circle back to some of the presentation that Rob did. You mentioned about using the MEWP from the ground control station now for normal use. Can you probably just elaborate on that a little bit for us, please, Rob?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. So yeah, the ground controls on MEWPs are only intended for emergency use and pre-use inspections. They are not proportional in their operations. So in other words, you can get things like whiplash for the operators in the basket if you're using the controls from the ground. The human being's brain and eye interface can't determine distances as well, or clearances as well, when you're operating the machine from the ground controls. You know, and also you'll get shadow areas, and as the light reduces, for example, in some applications, it's also very hard to judge distances, and you can only see what's going on really on one side of the boom lift or scissor lift, for example, and so you have so many limitations. And not only that, we need to remember that the OEMs don't endorse, and in fact they recommend do not use the ground controls for other than the reasons that IPAF promotes, which is for emergency function use and pre-use inspections. Yeah, so it's fraught with danger, and it should be avoided at all costs.
Thanks, Rob. And you know, as Vice Chair of the International Safety Committee, you know as well as I do that we've seen some fatalities in this area, sadly. You know, where people have used the ground control to position somebody in the platform. Okay, Alana, following well, last year we launched the targeted safety campaign based around electrocutions and electric shocks. We launched that in Conexpo in the United States. But straight after that, we experienced an increase in the number of electrocutions reported. I think I had heart palpitations when I saw the numbers go up. I suppose you go looking for it, you're going to find it. But why do you think that is? And do you think the campaigns had an impact?
So, Brian, we looked at this data as the International Safety Committee when we saw the increase in the number of electrocutions. And in actual fact, what we did was raise awareness across the industry that it was important to tell us when these incidents occurred. I think, a number of the electrocutions that we found out about in the previous years, we'd found out about through media and through connections rather than the incidents being reported. But what we found is that we actually were having the electrocution incidents reported on the portal by the people who were involved or the organisations who were involved. So I think we raised awareness. So I think in itself, whilst we've seen an increase in the number of incidents, the campaigns had an impact to raise awareness. And we really won't know what the impact is from that campaign for probably another 3 to 5 years when we actually see what impact we've had. Will we see a reduction in the number of incidents over a general period of time, or will we continue to see fluctuations in those types of incidents?
Yeah, and I think it's a good point you make there, Alana, that we're not expecting to see an immediate change overnight. This is going to take time, and as we bed the guidance and the information into various sort of countries and training establishments around the world, hopefully we'll see a reduction. And I just noticed we've got a question from Craig. Craig's asked, wouldn't it be more helpful, and thank you, Craig, wouldn't it be more helpful to be asking the right questions post-incident relating to the qualification of operators, and if the work assigned had a completed risk assessment? Are people even completing a decent incident investigation? So I think we'll probably, Alana, what's your views on this? Can I ask you on that?
I think, we do ask for some of that information on the accident reporting portal. We certainly ask whether the operator had qualifications to operate the MEWP, were they competent. We don't always get the information from the people reporting, unfortunately. The number of don't knows that we get, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I think is about a quarter of the reports we get around about I don't know if the operator was qualified or not. And it would be hugely helpful if we did have the yes or no answer to that question, because it would enable us to look at whether or not we need to enhance the training around it, and whether or not the training is having an impact. And the same with the risk assessments. In various different countries, it will be called different things, but risk assessment and planning is hugely key to ensuring the safe operation of MEWPs, as with any other task that we undertake at work that's high risk. I think many organisations do carry out very good in-depth investigations, but not all our organisations have access to the competent resource to be able to do that. There's many of us on this webinar that are lucky to work for large organisations with people who are trained in incident investigation, but there will be companies out there who are using powered access equipment who are 3, 4, 5, 6 people in an organisation who just don't have access to that. And maybe that is something that we need to look at. How do we enhance people's skills around incident investigation to get more data to help inform our campaigns?
Thanks, Alana. And yeah, I will also back up there that we do get an indicator as to levels, person's level of training, whether we're trained, novice, trained, experienced, self-taught, and we're kind of really reliant on the person entering the data at that time to put that information in there. What I would add is that data and that information isn't on the Global Safety Report currently, but if you register for accident reporting, it gives you access to another dashboard where you can see that data. So I think that's useful. Okay, that's great. I'm just conscious of time. We've obviously had one person leave already. So and thank you, Craig. I see your comment. That's absolutely fine. Happy to engage at any point in time. I think from my perspective today, and hopefully you've kind of got a bit of a flavour of it, but we've come to the end of the webinar. Certainly, I hope you found it useful and thought-provoking and can take something away from that. But first, I'd like to thank Alana and Rob for their time and the effort that they've put into it. These don't happen overnight. These do take time and planning and joining meetings to make sure we've got things working and such, to make sure that, we give the best experience to your good selves. And of course, lastly, thank to you, because if you didn't join the webinar today, we'll be talking to each other and ourselves, which isn't too bad sometimes, but we do know that we get these webinars and they will be looked at afterwards. So thank you very much. Take care and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thank you very much.